You mean it'll be difficult?
Very.
Well, this is not mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. It's mission impossible.
Why is Mission Impossible so special? The Mission Impossible franchise is not perfect, however it is special to me and many other action lovers. But the real question is what makes it special? What makes it outstanding and what makes it outshine most other action films? I mean, you got Tom Cruise with great writing and badass action and death-defying stunts. What is there not to like? Let's dig into the roots of the franchise first. Mission Impossible isn't even Mission Impossible, did you know that? The films were not an original franchise. Well, if you're so confused, let me explain. The original Mission Impossible dates back all the way to the 1960s as a 7-season TV series that ended in 1973. To be quite frank with you, I have not seen the TV series, but it seems like it's very similar to what became the franchise later on, based on my research. The intro theme of the show actually does originate that iconic theme of Mission Impossible. Which we're going to continuously hear in the movie franchise later on, more so as an upgraded epic version. But funny enough, the TV series does not follow the same storyline with Ethan Hunt, but it has a bunch of different characters, however it's with the same agency, Impossible Mission Force. Now it's around 1995 to 96, Mission Impossible was getting adapted to a film with a whole different storyline and a fresh cast and crew, and a film that is inspired by the TV series a great amount, but still holds up an original story. Tom Cruise is cast as Ethan Hunt, who then becomes one hell of a legendary badass protagonist. He truly is an absolutely perfect casting and elevates every scene that he's in. Tom Cruise is actually the reason why Brian De Palma even done this movie at all, and it is one of the coolest stories I've heard in filmmaking. A younger Tom Cruise was and probably still is technically best friends with Steven Spielberg, who's one of the all-time greats in cinema. He used to live down the street across him and visit him a lot and have dinner with him, and they would just watch movies together and talk about film. Then one night he came over to have dinner at Spielberg's place, and Brian De Palma just so happened to be there. And after hanging out with De Palma and Spielberg, Tom then went home and still had Mission Impossible still in his mind, but at that time Mission Impossible still had no director. He went on to stay up all night and rewatched 14 hours worth of Brian De Palma's films. Around the films like The Untouchables, Carrie, Blowout, and Dressed to Kill, all of that inspired Tom Cruise to hire Brian De Palma to direct this film. It's honestly so crazy to think that just that one dinner with De Palma and Spielberg was what led Tom to hire De Palma to direct Mission Impossible. Now that has to be an insane domino effect or butterfly effect. Because what if he never went to that dinner with De Palma and Spielberg? Imagine how differently the outcome of the entire franchise could have been. It honestly literally could have been a disaster. So Brian De Palma is now hired, and his distinctive directing style that he'll probably never change is also what makes Mission Impossible Mission Impossible. If you don't already know, De Palma is this masterful, one-of-a-kind director who in his filmography masterfully crafted his style of suspense and plot twists. He then put his storytelling style and his talented skills of putting unique suspense and cinematography, and most importantly, the plot twists, all into Mission Impossible. They're all the reasons why he's what influences all of the upcoming directors who go on to direct the other Mission Impossible films. Also, as a big De Palma enthusiast, it was so nice and surprising to see how he, as a thriller drama kind of director, can actually put his skills into directing an action thriller like Mission Impossible, which is totally out of his style. De Palma's Mission Impossible is what makes me realize on the whole outlook of the franchise just on how different each director makes the films. I mean, sure, they follow the same and similar plot twisty story with all the action and drama, but it just gets more and more tremendous within action and world building. Each director has their own distinctive style that feeds into the franchise, making each film better and better or worse, depending on what way you perceive the films. De Palma is a suspenseful thriller-esque type of director who rarely does action, so when he goes on to do action, it actually turns out to be great. And his style of slow and suspenseful blends in well when he chooses to make the film intensely epic and mind-blowing with all of the action sequences and with his plot twist skills as well as his storytelling style. Another special thing from him is his camera work, which is so unmatched. They literally drag you into the scene from how immersive they can become, and it just adds so much life to the suspense and filmmaking scope of the film, especially the way he utilizes the plot twisting skills to really make this film overall feel mind-blowing. Then we have John Woo, who goes on to direct Mission Impossible 2 after Tom Cruise asked De Palma to direct another Mission Impossible film, but he declined because he was too exhausted to make another one and one was enough. John Woo, one of the greatest action movie directors in cinema, sadly directs the worst movie in the franchise because his style of directing and action ended up being too mediocre for this franchise, and everything he tried ended up being too melodramatic for this film, except for the plot twist of course. Hot take, but I honestly enjoy Mission Impossible 2 a lot. It's got Ethan Hunt at his most acrobatic form kicking great amount of ass, and I really liked that action style. What concludes from this film is Mission Impossible 2 is fun and cool but bad. And me liking it like it's a guilty pleasure just goes on to show how different each director is, and how different each person views the film. J.J. Abrams is a director that I'm not familiar with except from his work from the Star Wars sequels, but just acknowledging and witnessing his work alone in Mission Impossible 3 still feels very different from his style in Star Wars. It's once again sadly one of the weaker Mission Impossible films, but a favorite a lot. It feels so grim and harsh, and it's visually appealing in the most dramatic ways. On a side note, rest in peace to this one-of-a-kind, legendary, amazing actor Philip Seymour Hoffman, who died 10 years ago, and he plays Owen Davian, the antagonist of this film, and is seriously one of my favorite villains in the franchise. Brad Bird, the director of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and thankfully this is one of the better and more enjoyable films in the franchise, and Brad is yet another director whose whole filmography does not match up with the type of film that Mission Impossible is, because his whole filmography literally consists of Ratatouille, The Incredibles 2, and The Iron Giant. If you tell someone who isn't a huge lover of cinema but knows these films that this guy is the same director who directed Mission Impossible 4, they would probably think you're joking around or lying. And I find it funny just looking at his filmography alone and seeing a movie like Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is just so funny to me. Brad really took on the leap of faith of making Tom Cruise do some insane stunts that he's of course willing to do, but just the fact that someone like Brad was a director to make that type of jump from great and mediocre action films to actually serious and real thrillers with much more sense to the wording Mission Impossible is unreal. The stunts and action and story in Ghost Protocol is simply breathtaking, and that ending was perfection. Now moving away from Brad, there's a switch with 3 movies with the director Christopher McQuarrie, the masterful action director I deem as a top 3 action directors of all time, because oh my goodness did this legend elevate the Mission Impossible franchise to the max. With Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, Fallout, Dead Reckoning Part 1. Action wise and production wise and plot twist wise, these 3 films by Chris is the best of the best. And if you think what Brad did was cool, Christopher is the ultimate upgrade of a director. The cinematography that he has in all 3 films is so visually striking to the soul, the way it beautifully and intensely immerses you to all of the action sequences that are so action packed to the brim with these electrifying stories in all 3 of these films are just perfection. Fallout is without a doubt the best film in the entire franchise. That is a freaking masterpiece. The casting of the entirety of Mission Impossible is another factor that plays a great part in holding a big backbone in what makes this franchise so fresh and consistent. We got Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt, which is one of the most perfect castings in fiction. The side characters either feature a love interest or Ethan's friends that he would make along the way, and they would all be such iconic and great actors. And going on to the antagonists are incredibly chosen from how well they're performed by Philip Seymour Hoffman, Jon Voight, and Sean Harris, who all just know how to hit the right spot villainously in menacing dialogue and how to control high stakes. And there are a few other excellent actors who play antagonists, but those 3 are just highlights for me. The endings in nearly all of Mission Impossible films bring out an indescribable feeling of overwhelming shock and excitement, and it's so fascinating how the writing just surpasses itself each time. Overall, Mission Impossible is a masterpiece of a franchise no matter what, and these are all the reasons why I think it's so special, just from how many directors there are and how unique they can be, and the storytelling they can all convey. It's rare to get a masterpiece of an action franchise, but Mission Impossible does it perfectly. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoy talking about my favorite action franchise, which is Mission Impossible, and it is not only my favorite action franchise of all time, it is one of my favorite franchises of all time in general. And here's the cherry on top. I actually have a Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning signed poster by nearly the entire cast, and I collect many autographed items, but this one is the most closest one to me, because the Mission Impossible franchise I hold so close to my heart, and I will do so for that item. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and comment down below what is your favorite Mission Impossible movie, and what are your thoughts in general, and I'll see you guys in the next time.
Mission accomplished!